Hi, Chris Hill, welcome. It's so good to see you.
It's a treat, Meredith. Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Well, I'm excited for our audiences to get to know you a little bit because you are an expert. You've been doing this for 30 plus years. Can I say
Mhm.
that? 30
Yes,
plus
I think
years.
I think
And
you just said it. So,
I
yeah.
did. I said it twice, in fact. And for those of you who don't know what we're doing right now, this is the Speakers Lounge. I do it once a month, every first Monday at noon. I go live with a special guest who is an expert in the field of speaking. And Chris Hill not only is an expert, and you just heard for 30 years, but I have had the honor of working with Chris Hill and partnering with Chris Hill, and he founded Hillside Communications. How many years ago?
Nine 1998. So, yeah,
So some time
a while.
ago.
It's been a
You're
minute.
very well established. You work a lot with scientists and medical experts. Some of those companies are like Pfizer and Merck, MSD, and you help take people who are very science minded, take that information, their expert information, and turn them into educators by simplifying complex ideas, helping it be a little bit more tangible for their audiences. Can you speak a little bit into how did you get into that work, because it's very specialized and very needed.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, a long time ago in a country far, far away, I was a science teacher. And then by way of a couple of different places. I found myself with my wife Cindy in Denver, and at that time I was teaching computer mathematics, another kind of pretty technical subject. But I was introduced to the idea of essentially simplifying technical information for an audience that may not have exactly the same knowledge and experience as the person presenting it.
Mhm.
Again, my first dip into this world was through the world of computer technology, but it became clear to me that there were many other scientific and technical people that could perhaps use some help in communicating what they know, which was usually very detailed, very
Mhm.
extensive, and they could probably use a little help in communicating that in a person to person, or at least a live setting. Most of the people that we work with have spent a large part of their careers really learning and packing into their heads a lot of detailed science information. Of course, in the space of a short presentation, there probably isn't time to communicate everything they know, and the different audiences that they speak to may
Mhm.
not be interested in everything they know. So, what can we do to kind of customize and tailor and simplify from all of that knowledge something that the audience will listen to, understand, and remember? And that's what we've been doing for as long as we have been in business.
I love it, and I feel like the work you do is incredibly important, and the way I always like to share that with clients is you don't need to give us the whole enchilada. You know, like, we don't we want you leaving us wanting more. We just want a taste of the enchilada and then leave us hungry for the rest of it.
I couldn't say that. I couldn't say that better, Meredith. That's exactly it. I mean, if you can do two things in a presentation.
Mhm.
Number one, leave the audience with something they will remember when you're gone. And
Yes.
secondly, motivate them to do to be interested in that topic and maybe follow up with what you introduced again after your time is over. If you can do those two things, you can count your presentation a success.
Beautiful. Okay, so talk to me a little bit about changing times and changing audiences and changing attention spans. What would you say to your present day audience right now, to the people who are watching who might be technical presenters or who work with people who are more technically minded, how is it that we can serve today's audience the best?
Well, I think we need to recognize that while there's a lot of information out there,
Mhm.
uh, with all the different channels that are now available to us via the internet, there's a lot of information out there. But unfortunately, there's so much information for a given audience. It's not always easy for them to find exactly what they need to know. And so
Mm,
I think for a presenter, what that means is you really have to differentiate yourself as a human messenger differently from all the other information sources that a person might have, recognizing that even while you are presenting, some of those information sources are kind of intruding into that experience. So it's not always easy to cut people off from their phones, from their iPads, even while they are listening to you. But that's something you can do if you can capture their attention early on and keep your messaging super simple. So that the whole idea is to create an experience for them that is richer and better than what they may be able to get just via the internet.
I love that, and I have been telling clients recently because I'm working with a lot of technical folks from AWS. Is your objective is to get people not to check the alerts on their phone?
Absolutely.
That's your objective. And so
Absolutely.
how are you gonna get that objective met? And I love that you use the word experience. It's not a presentation. It can't be just a presentation anymore. You have to start looking at them as an experience that you a journey, if you will, that you're taking your audience on. So what are some things that you would recommend people doing, uh, like storytelling as an example, to
Yes.
help create that experience for people?
Thank you. I think fundamentally what you need to do as a presenter, as an educator, is reestablish yourself in that experience with the audience. Again, there's tons of information out there. Even a PowerPoint slide deck represents a lot of information. But if you just leave the work to the slide deck alone, right? If you just lean on the slides, it's going to be a very dull, boring, unsatisfying experience for the audience. So what you have to do is, if you like, rejoin the spotlight as the expert presenting it and remind the audience that they are taking part in a human to human experience rather than just a human to technology experience. If you can do that, you will absolutely be successful. But that's what we try to do. Um,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
and we do that in two different ways. First of all, we give our learners an opportunity to be really strategic in what they present to the audience that is
Yeah,
going to be in front of them. So we make sure that the speaker, the presenter, is really serving the audience instead of serving the information that they are presenting. Because if it doesn't get to the audience, well, you kind of wasted your time. The second thing we do is, if the opportunity is there, we give the presenters some simple tools to make sure that the audience sees them as the expert. I mean, this can get down into some of the nonverbal things they can do to make sure that they look like they are completely engaged to the audience, and in fact make sure that they really are. And I think, Meredith, this is something that I've always respected that you do so critically. We provide some very simple tools for our learners, but I think you know some of the things that we're talking about.
yeah, no, thank you. I mean, it's the whole package. I always say to people, like, I know you're not a performer. Like, we're not asking presenters to be performers, but there is a performative element to presenting. You are bringing a heightened sense of who you are into the space. You have to, in order to keep
Yes.
that engagement alive and that connection, which is what's really important, is that connection piece, that human to human that you speak into. And then how you convey those words, how you show up, your posture, your nonverbals, all of that is so incredibly important. And I don't feel that we especially the science experts, the people that I have worked with, they don't really learn that in school.
No, and again, for the people that we work with, most of the time, of course, their focus is on their own content
Yeah.
and their own information, and what they tend to do is ignore that element that we're talking about right now. I'm so I'm so happy that you mentioned the whole business of performance, because again, the last thing we would do for some of our veteran scientists and speakers is encourage them to act. But what we recognize that in many situations, there is a requirement for a different set of nonverbal physical behaviors than there would be if you are just speaking to a colleague at the university or outside the lab. There is a requirement that you are different non-verbally, physically, in some very specific ways. The way you need to come across in front of an audience of 10, 50, 500 requires that you adjust your voice, how you use your eyes, what you do with your hands to make sure that you come across to that audience as exactly the right person with the right information. And they won't actually see you necessarily any way that is different
Mhm.
from the way you might be in your ordinary everyday communications. But to create that impression, you actually do have to do something different. You kind of have to change your voice. You have to change your eye contact, not in complicated ways, simple ways, but it makes a huge amount of difference to the way you are perceived. And that's
Oh,
just,
I mean, and 100%. And I will say to Chris that not these things don't happen overnight. It's not a
no,
quick fix. The one thing I always encourage people to do is find ways that you can practice this on a regular basis so that when you show up, it doesn't feel awkward. You've embodied it. You've integrated it more. So let's talk a little bit about the practice piece because I do feel that that's where people lack when it comes to the preparation practice component of presenting. So, can you speak into that because I'm leaning into all of you who are like listening right now or watching. You've got to start practicing more. Like stop telling me that you're not feeling confident. The reason why is because you're not putting in the reps.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. And forgive me, I'm going to nerd out here a little bit.
I
So,
nerd
yeah.
away. I just
Patience.
shamed everybody. I mean, I didn't mean to, but it just happened
Yeah. Um,
in a loving
so,
way.
so my graduate work is in learning psychology, right?
Mhm.
Educational psychology. So I picked up a couple of things about how people learn. What we know is that learning is not just a mental process. That's where it may start, whether you're reading a book or you're listening to a podcast or you're listening to a lecture. Of course, if you're sitting there in silence, that's principally a mental process.
Mhm.
But you're not done. And we kind of already know that, right? Especially for something that has such a big physical component as presenting. From what we've just said, it's not just a matter of talking your data, right? You have to be more involved physically in that. And of course, to do something physically better requires practice. You wouldn't watch a videotape about skiing and then expect now that you are an accomplished skier and you can just jump on a blue slope whenever you feel like it, right? You can't learn tennis from a book. At some point, you take what you have absorbed mentally and you put it into practice.
Mhm. Mhm.
In simple terms, for the environment in which we work, we always say that until you hear your words, your own words coming back to you, you really haven't completed the process of preparation for the talk. There's something magical that happens when you actually talk through the ideas that have been in your head for some time. You
Mhm.
know, we fine tune what we're saying as we hear ourselves say it. We
Yeah.
get rid of all of those kind of, ums and ahs and filler words. And we gradually get to a place where we sound like the presenter our audiences expect us to be. Now, for busy scientists, that means you may not have time to practice a full 45-minute presentation, but that first 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes are absolutely crucial because, of course, that's when you're making your best first impression.
Yeah.
So we would say you're not done until you've practiced that opening, that introduction, at least 3 times. But however many times you need to do it until it, to some extent, becomes quote unquote automatic. Does
Yeah.
does that make sense, Meredith?
Oh, 100%. It's about just putting in the reps. Like if you're going to get up every morning and work out, add it to your workout. Incorporate it.
Yeah.
Incorporate it into your daily routines while you're making dinner. Put your notes up on the cabinets as you're, cutting those onions. But find ways to say it out loud and up. I always say up on your feet. Don't just sit there passively mumbling to yourself in front of the computer. Though that does help. I just put together a presentation yesterday and I was talking out loud to myself a lot, just trying to work it out in my own head, like the human jigsaw puzzle that is in my brain. But and that helps you just reformulate the almost like the Rubik's cube of ideas.
Yes. I love that. I love that analogy. And of course, we've all got video recorders on our smartphones now. So,
Yes.
I mean, if you can take 10 minutes to just set up your phone in a quiet place and just take a look at yourself, trust me, of course we can help, but you're going to see things in 2 minutes that will allow you to make those adjustments. And,
Oh,
and you
yeah.
know, it's absolutely time well spent. Once you've done all the heavy lifting of getting your story straight, that's the final shine on the apple.
It is. It is. Let me give a little direction for people who are watching when it comes to video feedback, and that I have found to be very helpful because we were talking about the nonverbal cues as much as we're talking about the content itself, and most of you are very good with the content. So when you put yourself on video, which is what Chris is just inviting you to do, is to do that presentation on video, hear yourself out loud. When you play that video back, the first thing I want you to do is just turn the sound down and watch
Mm.
yourself. No sound. Just look at your nonverbal cues. What do you think of your gestures? What do you think of your posture? And be nice to yourself. Be like, oh, I really liked what I did there. I really liked what how I moved over there at that line. Great. And then ask yourself, what can I adjust? Not what did you do wrong, or you really don't like the shirt that you chose to wear that day. Just like, what can you adjust? Same thing with the sound. Don't watch the video this time, just listen to it and then notice those verbal cues. Like, oh, I really like how I sounded here, or ooh, I should probably raise my voice here, or I was mumbling here. Again, what did you like? And then what would you adjust? And then watch both of them together, of course, and see what it looks like together. But that's a really great way to kind of isolate those different things that we were just talking about.
Absolutely. And again, you really do need to turn off your self-criticism and your self-judgment when you're watching that. Everybody has it. We have it. It's completely natural. But notice on the improvement from the first time to the second time to
Mhm.
the third time. Again, there's not a better way to invest a minute or two before you go live in front of your expected
100%.
audience.
And I'm going to say this, Chris, because this has been my big thing. Stop practicing in front of the mirror. You're not going to get the same kind of feedback. You're going to get stuck with your little weird behaviors and facial expressions, and you're not going to be able to get the same feedback.
Agreed, agreed. You just don't get that same perspective,
Mhm.
that kind of third person view that a recording from your phone will give you. Yeah,
Yeah.
completely agree.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, I'm going to ask you another question just because you
Sure.
know that I'm active on TikTok. And a couple of weeks ago, I posted a video, and I am a big stickler about we just talked about the introductions, like get those introductions down. That's your first impression. with your audience. That is the moment where you get to engage with them and get them to lean in. So I always say, don't start with who you are. We know you're credible. We know you belong here. That's why we're all sitting in these seats. Get us a reason to care first. What is the problem or the solution to that problem? Start with a statistic, start with an open-ended question, start with something that gets us and our brains engaged. Then you can share who you are for the credibility piece. Now, I posted this video on TikTok and a doctor responded.
Of course.
Since this is
Uh-huh.
geared towards our technical people out there. Hello, doctor, if you're watching. And he said, we in the medical community would never start a presentation that way. And I, of course, pushed back and I said, well, I've been doing this for 10 years and I've been coaching a lot of medical doctors. But I will say the thing I would acknowledge is that not all audiences and situations are the same. So can you speak into that a little bit? Because I know there's more formal, there's some formalities in the medical world. So that can we just differentiate what kind of presentations we're talking about here and the different scenarios that doctors and medical professionals might find themselves in?
Yeah, absolutely. You always have a choice. You're the captain of this ship, so you
Thank
always have
you.
a choice. But is it going to be the end of the world if of the 5 presentations in the agenda, of which you're number 4, is the world going to come to a stop because you changed the order of your presentation? But okay. I agree with you, Meredith, in the sense that if we're talking about serving the audience, why would you put yourself number 1 on that list? Okay,
Mhm.
if you're going to serve the audience from the very first moment you start speaking, and give them a reason to listen. Now, like you say, that could be a personal narrative. It could be a way to connect to the audience by sort of describing how you share their experience. Again, you're building credibility, you're building engagement, and then whatever you need to share that will tell the audience you are exactly the right person to address the need that you just described in
Mhm.
your first part of your opening. So again, at the end of the day, if you choose to put your own experience first, okay, that's fine. What I would say though is, a detailed CV is not going to encourage the audience to listen any more carefully than just a very, very brief introduction in terms of who you are and why you're the best person to deliver the information that you're going to deliver. So
Brilliant.
yeah, I
I love
mean,
it.
again, if your goal is to stand out in the memory of your audience, again, especially if you're in a multiple speaker situation, you either go first, you go last, or if you're in the middle, you do something different.
Because the goal is to be remembered. But if you
Right.
sound like everybody else, you're not going to be remembered and your content will be forgotten.
Absolutely. And the good news here is you don't have to be a lot different
Nope.
because we all know what those other speakers are going to look and sound like.
Mhm.
So a 5%, I don't know what that number means, a 5% difference in the way you speak, in the way you open your presentation is going to make a much bigger impression on the audience than you would expect it to. It's just going to make that so much more special for them. And again, the goal here is listening, paying attention, understanding, and remembering. If they can do all of those 3 things, I'm happy. I don't care where you put your introduction.
Okay, beautiful. Okay, I'm going to pivot here, Chris, because we can't
Okay?
give them the whole enchilada.
No, we won't. We don't want to do
We
that.
can't do that. And we've already dropped like a lot of nuggets. They've gotten
Here we
like at least a layer of refried beans
go.
in there. Okay.
I think I understand that reference. Thank you very much.
Because I think we have more important things to talk about right now, Chris, which is
Okay.
that you just released a book.
Thank you.
You have it in front of you? Because I was just before this live, this speakers lounge, I can't find my book.
Right. Of
I own a copy, I swear.
just
You
one.
sent it to me. I'm gonna buy more.
Uh-huh.
I
Well,
am. Show
of
us your
course,
book.
of course, I have a copy of the book here. The book is called Expert to Educator: How to Be an Outstanding Science Presenter. Again, essentially, it is a summary of all the skills that we have learned over our years in this educational enterprise. And it's the same skills we use every day. Okay. So in a sense, this might be considered a textbook for anyone that has to deliver a scientific presentation. Actually, there's a lot in here for anyone that has to get up and present. So yes, it's not a long read. It's available from all the usual channels. I'm pitching my own book now, which is really kind of unusual
Well,
experience.
I'm gonna you don't I mean, if you want me to pitch it, I will pitch it.
Well, yeah, it's available on Amazon. Um, it
Because
it it's it also has, and I need to remember this. I've been told to remind the audience here. And there are 11 chapters in this book that address everything from your basic stand-up didactic lecture type presentation all the way through to something that is more facilitated, where you're basically guiding the audience to a particular learning objective via conversation, via discovery. Cool stuff, right?
yeah, it is
And
very cool stuff. Yeah.
yeah, and I mean that's why I'm still doing this after all this time. It's so much fun. At the end of every chapter, what I've provided is a tip sheet summary.
Mhm.
And if you're too cheap to buy I'm sorry, if you don't have the budget to accommodate an investment in this text, you can go to our website, hillsidecommunications.com, and you will find a place there where you can actually download all the tip sheets from the text at no cost for you. And that might be something that you could print off. You could put them in your presenting binder and have it close to you, just as something you can quickly review before you take the stage or step into the spotlight.
I love it. So I highly recommend people to purchase Chris Hill's book because it is going to be chock full of really incredible. It is chock full of really incredible information. It is very simply laid out. I love that you have the chapters on how to get conversations going because I feel like that's something where a lot of people I know when I'm coaching people just in this simple Q&A can be challenging for some people, especially if you get that long-winded person in the audience who thinks they're more of an expert than you are. How do you negotiate those kind of people? And you give some really wonderful advice in there for negotiating different types of people and different types of audiences and the different scenarios in which you are in. So I highly recommend the book. And it doesn't matter if you're a science expert or medical expert, if you're a technical person, it's going to be just as important for you to read this book as well. All of the things are just as valuable. This is I put Chris Hill's name here so that you can have it right. See, do you see it? Hillsidecommunications.com. Wherever I post this, Chris and audience members, you will see that I will have links to the book in my comment section. You will also have access to Chris Hill and Hillside Communications. And I get to work with Chris. So you'll have access to not just Chris, but to both of us.
Mm-hmm. How much fun is that, right?
We have so much fun
We
when
do.
we get to go coach people. We've traveled around the world doing it.
Yes, we have. Yes,
And
we have.
I have to give a shout out to your team too, because you have some of the most incredible people on your team that are working with you and have worked for you for many years, including your wife, who you co-founded Hillside Communications with, Cindy, who's near and dear to my heart and is an incredible performer, improviser. You've attracted some cool people, Chris Hill, including your own wife.
Thank you. Thank you. I depend and have depended for our success on the kindness, the intelligence, and the support of this team. They're like family to me.
Yeah.
And all I would say in terms of the book is, with the help of my team, we have road tested every recommendation that I put into the book. And I'm so grateful for their support in allowing us to do that over the years. I'm not sure how exact this figure is, but I think the number is about 30,000 scientific and technical presenters that we have helped in our time as a training company. And like I said, these are these are scientists. They don't take recommendations readily. They come in with a healthy skepticism, right?
Yeah.
But
Yep.
everything that we have provided has been approved, if you like, by all those people that we've had in our workshops. So um, these recommendations are not just something I pulled out of thin air. We have tested them with the help of the Hillside team for a long time, and I would just encourage you to give them a try.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. It's always a joy to have a conversation with you. Thanks for being on the Speakers Lounge. Again, I'm Meredith Grundy. I am here every first Monday of the month at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. And you can also find me on YouTube. You can find me LinkedIn and, of course, TikTok. And all of those handles will be put in the show notes. So thank you for being here. Bye, Chris.
Bye, Meredith.